Toyota. That name alone, it just brings to mind words like quality, durability, and of course, trust. For decades, it's pretty much been the gold standard. But what if I told you that behind that bulletproof reputation, there's a more complex and sometimes a much darker reality? Today, we're going to look beyond the myth. We're going to uncover the paradox of the world's largest automaker. Yeah, for so many of us, this is the Toyota we know and recognize. It's probably the car your parents drove, right? The one that just seemed to run forever with nothing more than basic maintenance. And look, that perception, it wasn't an accident. It was meticulously crafted over generations, one car at a time, creating what is honestly one of the most powerful brand legacies in modern history. And the scale? It is just staggering. Over 10 million vehicles a year. Think about that. When a company is that big, its corporate culture, its strategic decisions, its ethical choices, they don't just impact the company's bottom line. No, they have this massive ripple effect across the entire global economy, our environment, and yeah, even our daily lives. So, what happens when a legacy that seems so perfect starts to show cracks? That's really the core question we're digging into here. Because when you start to look a little closer, beneath the surface of that pristine image, a very different story begins to emerge. It's a story of resistance, of scandal, and of systemic failures. And it challenges pretty much everything we thought we knew about this automotive giant. All right, so let's get into our first section, innovation versus inertia. The first major tension we really have to explore is this whole idea of Toyota as a forward-thinking leader. Is the company that pioneered the hybrid revolution really the same one we see today? Well, the evidence, let's just say it's complicated. And the contrast here is, well, it's pretty stark. On one hand, you've got the company that gave us the Prius way back in 1997, completely changing the conversation around fuel efficiency. But then, on the other hand, you have the Toyota of today, a company that's been heavily criticized for dragging its feet on all-electric vehicles. They've even been caught lobbying against stricter emissions rules, and their own CEO once called EVs hyped. It's a genuine paradox. And look, this isn't just, some vague perception. The criticism is backed by hard data. A 2021 report from Transport and Environment, they put it really bluntly. They ranked Toyota dead last among major automakers for its readiness to switch over to battery electric vehicles. The accusation, basically, is that the company is just clinging to its hybrid past instead of really embracing an all-electric future. And this whole EV issue, it's not an isolated case. Not by a long shot. When you look back, you start to see a pattern. There was a $34 million fine back in 2003 for smog control defects. Then in 2019, they backed efforts to actually weaken emission standards. And then a massive, record-breaking $180 million fine in 2021 for failing to report emissions defects for an entire decade. So you see, this isn't just about being slow on EVs. It's a much broader and, frankly, more complex environmental record. Okay, so now we're moving from strategic choices to something much more troubling. We're talking about real, tangible failures in the very systems that were supposed to guarantee quality and safety in the first place. Now, to really get the gravity of these failures, you have to understand a key concept: Kaizen. It's this Japanese philosophy of continuous improvement. It's literally the bedrock of the legendary Toyota production system. The whole idea is about empowering every single employee to stop the production line, fix problems, and constantly make things better. You could say it's the very soul of the company. So, keeping that idea of Kaizen in your head, now look at this timeline. The late 2000s, that was the massive unintended acceleration crisis. Then the huge Takata airbag recall that affected millions of cars. And more recently, things have gotten even worse, with major scandals at key subsidiaries. Hino falsifying emissions data for almost 20 years, and Daihatsu rigging crash tests. This doesn't look like continuous improvement. It looks like a pattern of continuous crisis. And when you dig into the details, they are deeply concerning. We're talking about things like airbag controllers in test cars being different from the ones actually sold to the public. We're talking about data being faked for nearly 2 decades. And just in 2024, Toyota itself admitted to submitting false test data. It just forces you to ask a really uncomfortable question. Has that culture of Kaizen been replaced by a culture of misconduct? Okay, this brings us to what might be the most crucial part of this whole story. Despite all of these headlines, right? Safety scandals, environmental fines, ethical breaches, the public's trust seems almost unshakable. So the big question is, why? Well, let's just look at the numbers. In 2023, Toyota didn't just sell well, it absolutely dominated. We're talking nearly 11% of the entire global market. That's almost twice as many cars as its closest competitor, Volkswagen. So, yeah, the scandals are very real, but so is the company's success. It's a baffling disconnect. It's like the headlines are saying one thing, but the sales charts are telling a completely different story. Toyota's position as the world's #1 automaker seems totally insulated from controversies that, let's be honest, would have probably crippled almost any other brand. So, what's the deal with this incredible loyalty? It really seems to rest on three main pillars. First, you have that powerful, decades-long reputation for reliability. It's just so strong, it's practically ingrained in our culture. Second, that reputation creates generational trust. People buy Toyotas because their parents drove them. And finally, there's the sheer power of perception. For a lot of people, these scandals aren't a sign of systemic failure. They're just seen as isolated incidents. Little blips on an otherwise perfect record. And all of this leads us to one final, critical question about Toyota's identity, especially right now. In this era of such rapid change, is the company a guardian of quality and careful progress? Or has it become a gatekeeper, one that's holding back a necessary evolution? This is where you really see the two faces of Toyota, side by side. On one side, the strengths are just undeniable, right? Manufacturing excellence, groundbreaking hybrid tech, that legendary durability. But on the other side, you have this documented record of recurring safety scandals, a stubborn resistance to going all electric, and a history of lobbying against the very environmental policies you'd think its green image would support. And ultimately, it really just comes down to this. Toyota's famous conservatism, that slow, deliberate, long-term approach, that's what built the empire. It's what created the reliability and the trust that the brand still lives on today. But in a world that is demanding rapid technological and environmental change, that very same cautious nature might now be its greatest weakness. So, we'll leave you with this final thought to ponder. Is Toyota's careful, measured pace a responsible way to protect consumers and make sure we have a stable transition to the future? Or has that caution just turned into inertia, holding back the very progress the auto industry and, honestly, the world desperately needs? That right there is the Toyota paradox.